Hey everybody, this is D-Train with Raised by Sharks, and today I'm going to show you a quick video on the Insect Glaive. The Insect Glaive is one of the more complicated weapons in the Monster Hunter series, and as a result, it seems to be one of the more important weapons because of its utility and just how diverse it can be used. It's a mid-range to long-range weapon with lots of evasiveness with your vaulting, as well as powerful buffs for yourself, and the ability to easily mount monsters is just good for any team combination. A lot of beginners may see this weapon as way too difficult, the skill ceiling is way too high, but in reality it's not all that complicated. It's broken down into three real basic principles. Now let's start with the basics of the Kin Sect. The Kin Sect is a long-range attack where you send out a beetle or insect to attack either the monster or maybe for this example, a spot in the training area, the pillar, where it sends out and does damage from long distance, and then if you hit circle, it returns to you. Now you may notice in the top left corner, I now have a red buff right next to my sharpness bar. Now, there's 4 different buffs you can obtain throughout a fight. They are red, white, orange, and green, all of which have different buffs for your hunter. They only apply to you, not your entire team, but they do help you out in terms of staying alive and in hunting the monster. So, starting with the white buff, it will increase your speed for 90 seconds. So, which is very useful for if you're trying to quickly run away to get a potion or maybe move into position for another attack. The red buff is a attack increase for 60 seconds, which is obviously beneficial as it allows you to do more damage and helps you mount the monster even easier. Orange increases your defense and knockback resistance on weaker attacks from monsters, and that lasts for 45 seconds, which is very useful because it keeps you alive, and you don't have the best defense as an Insect Glaive. The final buff is a green buff, which recovers a small amount of health. It's generally just when you kind of miss, I'd say, when you miss your target, if you're going for the head or a tail, for example, and you just miss, you'll instead get the green buff, which an extra bit of health is always good. So it's not the end of the world if you would miss. To get these buffs, you have to aim with your left trigger and then fire with your right trigger on an object, in this case, from the training ground. And once the insect attacks it, you will see a little red beetle in the top left. And then as you hit circle, it will return to you, giving you that buff. Now, just like in the training ground, different items will give you different buffs. So, on a monster, for example, hitting different parts will give you different buffs. In order to get the white buff, you must hit either the legs or the wings of a monster. In order to get the red buff, you must hit the head of a monster. In order to get the orange buff, you must hit the monster's body, and the green buff is obtained from the monster's tail. This is a general rule. It does apply to most monsters, but there are some monsters that are exceptions to the rule. But it applies to pretty much most monsters you'll run into. As you can see in the top left corner, I have all 3 buffs, which when they combine, give you their individual buffs as well as bonus buffs on top of that. Now on the screen I will show you the different combos of the different buffs. The red and white combo giving you an even larger attack boost as well as the individual buffs between red and white for 60 seconds. White and orange gives you a buff of an extra defense on top of what you already get, as well as earplugs, which makes you resistant to some monster roars, which can be very helpful. Then, when you combine all 3, you get the combination of the two previous combos, as well as an extra attack and defense boost on top of all three of their individual buffs, making it the most ideal situation if you have all three up at the same time. It does only last 60 seconds though, so use that time wisely, but you can always just reobtain the buffs and get back the triple combo. It can be kind of tricky at first when you're aiming for the first time. There's a bit of aim assist when the monster's moving and running around. Sometimes you'll be aiming for the head and you'll get their arm. Sometimes you'll be aiming for the tail. Maybe you'll get them in the leg or the wing. It takes practice. You'll eventually hit all your targets, no problem. No one's perfect. It's not gonna kill your team if you don't get the specific buff at this moment, because it really only applies to you. It does help your team out, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world. The final two things I want to mention are the actual combos and the vaulting system. Now, in general, your job would be to mount a monster. So in order to do that, you would hold the right trigger and hit X at the same time, and you would vault yourself just like that. Now, this could be useful for mounting the monster, as well as using it as a getaway, along with tapping X in the air to evade. It's very useful for helping you get on top of monsters that are very fast or very large. It also makes it much easier to run away in case of needing a serious heal or wanting to apply a sharpen to your weapon. It is very easy to learn the vault. It's hard to master, as your timing is everything with this. You can use it to go right into combos. You can use it to get directly on the monster. If you learn to master it, you can learn to keep basically keep your hunter in the air flying at that point, as I'll show in some gameplay later. Now, vaulting is pretty simple. You get yourself in the right direction, you have no problem. But what a lot of people don't realize is the combos you use in the air matter, and the buffs you have while you're doing your combos also matter. So, if I give myself the red buff here, once I have it, it completely changes my combos. Especially while in the air. It gives you the strong jumping advanced slash, which is one of the best combos you have in the game. And if you do it right, you can chain it completely over and over as long as you're getting your hits in on the monster. Now, with those combos of buffs on top of your extended combos now, you become a very strong individual player, and it actually will be very beneficial to your team, as if you can just completely chain damage and not really take that much damage since you're always in the air. Although there are exceptions, certain monsters like a Nergigante or maybe a Rathalos who have large bodies or wings can whack you out of the air. Specific attacks may hit you out of the air if you don't time it right. But there's also times where you can knock them out of the air and completely save your team from getting completely destroyed by a huge combo from a monster, which can be the big difference between maybe failing or carding and successfully beating the quest. Okay, that gives you a basic rundown, and I think we should move on to some actual gameplay. Typically, when you want to first encounter a monster, you can go straight into attacking, or you could go straight up for an aerial attack, which could potentially start you off with a mount. Now, I generally try to mix it up between the two. I usually try to start with a Kin Sect attack, therefore getting a buff for myself almost immediately, just because it makes it easier for the rest of the hunt. Now, Jagras is trying to run away in this case. Now, as you can see, your basic attacks will do a good amount of damage. They will definitely hurt someone like Jagras. But once you get your buffs going, especially the red buff off his head, like I just got, he will be pretty easy to take down. And I'm already mounting them. So the hard part with mounting is certain monsters will buck just like a Jagras will buck like just like a horse or a bull, and will try to knock you off as much as possible. Other monsters aren't as crazy, like a Barrath, for example, not as crazy. Just like that, you can't get knocked off. But if you react quick enough and aim back towards the monster when he throws you off, you can get right back on and just destroy him and get him to get knocked over. Now, this isn't absolutely essential for an Insect Glaive to be an amazing mounter, but it only helps, and it's very likely what's going to be very common for you when you're with the group, because that's a good portion of the job as an Insect Glaive. Now that chain works really well on larger monsters, but for example, like I just missed, is not so great on certain monsters unless they're moving and you're chasing them. Like Jagras is right now, although at this point, yeah, there he goes. So you want to chain that when they are moving, not when they're specifically standing still, unless they are a bigger monster, just because they will be kind of hard to hit. I generally tend to lock on with the right stick in, just like that, because it does make it a little bit easier when you are in the air to be able to keep track of where they are. So when he's running away, it's a perfect way to build up your buffs, because you can hit him from a distance and grab yourself a decent few buffs. Now, you can also stop them and stop them from completely running, and in which case, it can make your life much easier. One smaller thing I did not mention is these little purple clouds, which is when you target the monster. When you hit them, they will send off a status effect. In this case, for the beta, it is a poison status effect, which can be very effective in terms of taking down a monster's health, and it's just very useful on top of your already damage. Now, it's really simple. It is great Jagras, not exactly your Nergigante out there, but I think it shows off how good this weapon can be, how strong it is, and how effective you really can be. You can use it to ride, you can use him to completely dominate a monster. It's a very versatile weapon. I personally think it's one of the best weapons in the game. I love using it. That's pretty much it for me, guys. Let me know if you need any more tips in the comments, any more specifics that maybe I left out. Let me know down below, and make sure you subscribe to Raised by Sharks.